now, I can't believe I'm saying this. Now is our time to introduce my main guest of tonight. She is the host of the 11th Hour at MSNBC and NBC News' senior business analyst. Please welcome to the stage, Stephanie Ruhle. Stephanie!
I'm so glad not to be home decorating for Christmas right now.
You're here surrounded by drag queens, girlies, and gays.
Yeah, I'm psyched to be here.
I love that you're here.
Thank you so much.
Before we begin, I want to play this clip to show the energy you bring to the 11th Hour every night on MSNBC.
We've accepted a narrative that despite an actually great economic recovery, the vibes don't feel good. So we want to reject it and get something else. And the person we are now betting on to change all of it is Donald Trump, a man who did two almost impossible things. He won the American presidency twice, and he drove a casino into the ground. What will the future hold now that America has just decided that we're going to F around and find out?
F around and find out. I think that will be the slogan of 2025. You were worked in investment banking for 14 years. Then you went to Bloomberg and MSNBC. So I mean this, like kind of the perfect person to talk about with everything going on in our culture post-election. You once said that people trust relationships, they don't trust information. The Pew Center found that 54% of adults say they get their news from social media. How does the media, with journalistic integrity, combat this misinformation that is so proficient now in our culture?
Thank you so much for inviting me to be here. It's so hard. And so I would start with this idea that we trust relationships, not information. So we need to connect with the people who are reading us, watching us, listening to us. Because if you make a mistake and you have a trusted relationship with your audience, they'll forgive you. Right. But you have to be honest and upfront about it. But the problem that we're dealing with right now is so much more complicated than that, right? If I say something and do something and you don't like it, right? I haven't left Twitter. I don't plan to. And if you don't like it, then you have every right to call me out and say it's bullshit and you don't like the way I sound, you don't like what I say. The problem is that our enemies, quote unquote, are lying about us. I mean, this week I had someone splice different pieces of what I said and they left out the punchline. But there's nothing I can do about that. And the reason we have to care is because this is what they want. Yeah. Right? Steve Bannon, who is a close ally and advisor to Donald Trump, just weeks ago said Democrats aren't the enemy. The media is. Right? The media is that last line of defense, and Donald Trump has already been successful at suppressing us, right? Suppressing people in business, suppressing people in the media, the threat of what we're in for. And after 2016, you saw people fired up, right? The day after the inauguration is when the first protests began. Yeah. Now, do you really think people are organizing? I don't think they are. And this whole, like, I want to tune out of the news and I don't want to watch anything, I want to curl up and watch Netflix, that's only feeding the beast.
Absolutely.
Because that's what they want to happen.
I listened to her podcast, Sarah Longwell from The Bulwark, and it's a focus group podcast. It's brilliant. And she said it's always incredible when she asks people what their news sources are. She's never heard of it. She's never heard of these programs. So like not only are they splicing you up, but you're just outgunned because who are these people that, let's say, thousands or millions of people are getting their news from? I've heard maybe 807 times Kamala should have done Rogan. You said she did a few interviews. You were one of the people she interviewed with. And I was watching her show, and you said how normally, as she is at the vice president, you struggle to get 25 minutes with her. Well, Trump sat down with Joe Rogan for 3 hours. And does this new media landscape require candidates to look at press opportunities differently than they have in the past?
Yes, and it should.
Right.
So I interviewed VP Harris and I interviewed President Biden a year ago. And I'll tell you, in the way of traditional media, the White House runs the show, right? When I interviewed President Biden, they gave me 10 minutes, okay? A politician can knock out one answer in 15 minutes.
Oh, for sure.
20 minutes before we went in, Savannah Guthrie and I were on the phone. She was the last person she'd interviewed President Trump, and her advice was, the person you're interviewing isn't the person you're up against, it's the clock. She's like, 10 minutes, like you're getting 3 questions in tops. We probably had 40 questions ready. At minute 9.5, I asked the president, your son Hunter might be indicted by your Department of Justice. How will this impact your presidency? A completely reasonable question. As soon as I said those words, President Biden's team waved in front of the camera, started screaming and yelling, and stopped the interview. Now, that immediately went on. That's public record.
Yeah.
That was in the transcript. That became its own story, and then they punished us. Right? We ended up going 14 minutes, and then NBC was in the box, and we were in trouble forever. I interviewed VP Harris, and they gave us 15 minutes. We ended up getting 25. However, in those completely structured environments, you never have a human moment. And this is the thing about Donald Trump. Love him or hate him, and when I say he keeps it real, but he's lying. People know what they're getting, and they're tired of polished politicians giving them sound bites. And you can see it in the way that they're tired of the way they consume media.
Yeah.
They don't want to consume media in a nightly news way where for 90 seconds they're hearing this, this, and this. They want an actual human connection, and lawmakers need to go there. Now, whether it was Joe Rogan or not, she did need to have more of those human moments. And I'll tell you one other example. The day after Donald Trump had that crazy rally at Madison Square Garden,
Oh, wow, yeah.
I
Garbage.
rolled the dice and I called him on the phone. And he answered.
Of course he did. Of course. What'd he say?
And I wasn't calling to chit chat. I said, Mr. President, this is Stephanie Ruhle. You made a lot of comments last night, blah, 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 blah. And it was not an on-the-record conversation. Long story, so I'm not going to get into what he said. But I called for one reason. I said, you just said a whole bunch of public things. I'd like to sit down for an interview with you. We got 5 days before the election. So we didn't get into anything. There's nothing for me to report. I called him and said, I want an interview with you. Obviously, he said no. But my point is, I was able to get to him by dialing his phone.
Right.
Now that might be completely ape shit, and you're like, I can't believe people know this guy's phone number.
Yeah.
But the reverse of that, if I were to want to connect with VP Harris or President Biden, there's 50 people between me and that. I could write a note that maybe could get to somebody, then through Pony Express and a pigeon, something might end up in a mailbox near them. And I called DJT to say, yo, can I have an interview?
And
he
he
told me to go
answered.
fuck myself, but I still was able to connect with him. Yeah.
But he still picked up. Well,
Yes.
I mean that's part of why AOC resonates so well, and that big
Yes.
thing she did, how voters voted for her and Trump. She is so accessible. She is so in front of the camera, and I admire her the transparency. But I will say, with that Kamala interview, you did get her to talk about flipping burgers at McDonald's. And, she loved talking about that. She smiled. It was personal.
Yes, she did. But I'm going to say, and I won't take too much time with this, something that she missed that I think Democrats miss, right? If Democrats are the party about like caring more and doing more and caring about everybody, they also need to have some hard conversations that when you care more and you treat people better, it might make the world cost more, right? And so she was quick to say, like, my job at McDonald's wasn't a small job. Every job is a job with dignity. Yeah. Every job is a job. I get that. But if in those low-wage jobs, you now want to pay people $20 an hour, and you want to offer them family time off, and you want to offer them X, Y, and Z, then Happy Meals aren't going to cost $3, and a whatever you call them, a Big Mac, super value meal isn't going to cost $5.
Right.
And they're afraid to say that, and you have to just start saying those, right?
Yep.
Like, the world's going to cost more. My son worked at a deli this summer and got paid $20 an hour, and every day my mother would pick him up from work, and she'd buy a sandwich, and the whole way home she'd be like, I can't believe the sandwiches cost $25. Like, they cost, and guess what? When you guys leave here and you go to a bar, you're going to spend at least 10 minutes at that bar bitching to one another about how much the drinks cost. And so when we wonder, and I'm not saying you shouldn't bitch about it, but we should just get real about how things are.
I mean, it's why Bernie Sanders, why Bernie resonates with people. It's like he's pretty much upfront about what he believes in, that it will cost.
He does.
But then he kind of,
but,
yeah.
And listen, Bernie Sanders is a superstar of superstars.
Yeah.
But let's be really clear. He has been in Congress for maybe not 30 years, but
Yes.
at least 20. And I think he's only gotten 4 things
100%.
passed.
Oh, you're talking to Hillary Clinton
and
lovers.
one
who
of
will love
those
to bring that up.
things was renaming a post office.
Yes, no, 100%.
But he's a superstar.
Superstar, but government
Yes.
takes compromise and work. And speaking of government and